Hold on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela. I am the managing director of Wisconsin Swimming. If you've not seen my face before, hello. For those of you that know who I am, thank you for joining us tonight. And um, we are very excited to be able to offer an opportunity to help educate parents and um, staff and coaches and all members of our LSC in our safe sport. We have one of the best in our LSC in Wisconsin Swimming, so we are very excited to be able to present these opportunities. So thank you for taking some time out of your day and prioritizing the safety of your athletes. I am going to turn this over to Mona, our safe sport coordinator, and let her take it away. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to get this. Now I can access it because I couldn't do all of it at the same time. Let me just do this. All right. Can you all hear me okay? And I think I just got myself slides sorted. Yes, so thank you everybody for coming. Today we're going to talk a little bit about preparing for a swim meet and preparing your children for a swim meet, and really thinking about from the perspective of how do we create a psychologically safe environment for all of our athletes. I am going to ask you to participate a little bit in this webinar. We're going to use the chat. So just to put some thoughts, there's going to be some reflective questions. So I would really welcome you putting some thoughts in those when the time is coming for that. So not going to ask you to talk. You can obviously raise your hand, and this is going to be informal in the sense that if you really have a question, you can raise your hand and I can take it in the middle of it too. Or you can put it in a chat and Angela can monitor that for us so we can have a conversation. So I don't want to leave anybody with any questions unanswered. And, let's use the chat to kind of communicate a little bit more. Awesome. So the first thing I want to just start kind of going from the same topic is that what comes to mind when you think about psychological safety in sport? So just write it in the chat, couple of words. What comes to your mind when you think about the word psychological safety in sport? I'm having a hard time seeing my screen and the chat, so I think Angela will be kind of guiding there a little bit. And once you get some responses, would you mind sharing those and giving me some ideas what's coming in there?
Sportsmanship,
Mm-hmm.
support,
Yeah.
privacy.
Yes. All of those really good ones. Any more? Well, I think all of those are really good ones. They definitely tie into what it is.
Feeling valued and lack of judgment.
Oh, yes, there's big words, but very important words. Awesome. Before I kind of get, I'm gonna let you marinate in those words a little bit, and maybe put a little bit more words in there if anybody comes up with stuff. And I thought I'll just start by giving a little bit of a welcome here and kind of talk to you a little bit about, I'm going to talk about research-backed insights with some practical tips to help parents prepare their child for competition. And I really hope you kind of leave here with understanding, a foundational understanding of what is psychological safety and why it's important in swimming and indeed all sports. And I'm going to leave the last part, give you some couple of practical strategies you can use as a parent to prepare your child for these competitions. So that's kind of like the outline of what we're going to do today. First, meet your host. That's me. I'm about 8 in that picture. I don't have one in color because I'm not old, but that's actually bright pink. And I was skating to the famous tunes of Henry Mancini's Pink Panther. So that's me at the age of 8. I want to bring that up there because that tells you that I'm not a swimmer. I am a certified mental performance consultant. I'm also a chartered psychologist from the UK, and I have a similar certified mental performance consultancy certification from my native Finland. My main day job that pays my mortgage is the UW. I'm at UW. I'm an associate professor in sport and performance psychology. but I also provide mental performance services to athletes at different levels. And as Angela already mentioned, I'm the Wisconsin Swimming Safe Sport Chair. On top of that, I started my swimming career as a USA Swimming Certified official, and I'm also a swim parent like you. My daughter is currently a senior in college, starting her last ever season, so this is where she's going to end her career. But I also am a former professional figure and synchronized skating coach, and I was a competitive athlete in lots of different sports, including figure skating, where you see the photo. So why do I share all of that? I share that because sport happens in a multitude of systems. So while we have in the middle, we have an athlete right there in the core of the whole thing. The athlete is always surrounded by family, friends, parents. All of that exists in different kind of systems like schools and sports systems. So for example, Wisconsin Swimming and Safe Sport. And equally, that exists in the cultural systems where we have norms, traditions, and values, and all of those things that influence all of those processes. And really, all of that exists even higher economical and policy related systems where the US Center for Safe Sport kind of governs and creates laws in which how we have to operate in the context of sport in the United States. And that even exists in a wider thing. So we look at things like environmental and historical chronosystems, so those time-based ones. And we've all gone through something quite significant. So the COVID-19 pandemic basically changed the whole system in which all of these layers inside operate. I bring that up because my experiences span across all of those different systems that exist, whether it's been as a coach, whether it's been an official, whether it's being in an academic position or the athlete right in the middle. So what I'm going to bring to you today is really try to look at this, how do we create psychological safety from all of those perspectives and bring it down to the level of what does all of that mean to you as a parent of an athlete. Awesome. So let's look a little bit deeper. Safe sport is obviously something that sits within the USA Swimming, and we in Wisconsin Swimming are dedicated to ensuring that all of our children and young adults can have a very healthy and positive experience when they are participating in the sport of swimming. So if we really look at it from the perspective what safe sport is, it is the commitment to providing those healthy and positive environments. And it's about making it free from abuse from all of its members. It kind of has sort of multi-layered approach to keep kids safe. It has some policies and best practice guidelines, and those involves things that happen in the meets, and those are the things that happens at practice. There's also some mandatory screening, criminal background checks, and things like that. There's a lot of training and education that all USA Swimming athlete members that are 18 and over and non-athlete members have to take. And then all of us are also responsible for monitoring, supervision, and mandatory reporting if we see something that is not what it's supposed to be. So really, if we look at the safe sport from the perspective of what are required, we are mandatory reporters. There is the minor athlete abuse prevention policy that has a lot of different things that how to navigate the sport within the practice and competitive environments. And the Meet 360 is a really cool guide that really tells us something like how to do best practice guidelines in the meets, and so that we can make it safe from that perspective. There is some practice guidelines that Safe Sport has established in 2019, and there's actually 9 recommendations, of which I'm going to pick up only one for this webinar. And that is that parents should be encouraged to appropriately support their children's swimming experience. Well, I think that's a very broad statement. It doesn't really say anything. It doesn't say how, why, what. It just said that you should be encouraged to appropriately support their children's. So what I really want to do today is to take this recommendation and like combine that with some of the sports psychology knowledge and understanding that I do for a living, and really try to make it sort of tangible that what does it mean and how can we make this sport better and safer for all of our children. So if we go by thinking about, you already answered as like what comes to mind when I say the word psychological safety. And if we really look at the definition of it, it means that it's a climate in which people are comfortable expressing themselves. It is a climate where people feel safe to speak up, make mistakes, and be themselves without fear of embarrassment or punishment. So some of those terms that you use there, like no judgment, absolutely falls into what is psychological safety. So it's kind of a be who you are and be comfortable expressing who you are without thinking that there's any repercussions if you say something wrong, or if you don't know the answer, or some of your actions don't necessarily match up with what everybody else is doing. So now I'm going to take a little pause again. So if that's the definition, think about a time you felt safe to speak up or make a mistake. And instead of just telling me what that time was like, give me some of those thoughts that how did that make you feel? And what impact did that have on you when you were in a scenario where you felt safe to speak up or make mistakes? Give you a little time to think, and then when Angela gets some responses, I'd like you to read them out for me. And give you some time. This is a safe space, so there's no right or wrong answers here, right?
Would you please repeat the prompt one more time?
So the prompt was to think about a time you felt safe to speak up or make a mistake. How did you feel? And what impact did that feeling have on you?
Relieved, felt included.
Excellent. I'll give it a little bit more time.
Promotes transparency and confidence.
Yes. Awesome. Mm-hmm.
I felt listened to.
Yep. I think that's about it. But yes, I think what you really highlight there, there's a couple of things. There's a lot of emotions in terms of like feeling relieved and feeling like, hey, I'm part of this. Everybody is with me. They stand beside me. But also the things like feeling confident. And I think that's a really important skill, that when we get to a point that we feel like when we make a mistake, instead of it feeling like, oh my God, I'm not worth it, it actually gives you an opportunity to then feel confident. Hey, I got these people behind me and I can rise from it and try again. And that's ultimately what I think is one of those key things about what psychological safety is. And if we look at the literature that has kind of taken, this is actually a systematic review that kind of looked at like all of the key ingredients that literature has found about psychological safety. And those actually are quite important ones. The most important one, the most commonly present, is the promotion of risk taking. So I often talk to my athletes about you take calculated risk, you take conscious risks in some way. So you're willing to try something even at the risk of it not being successful. It's another ingredient is an absence of threat or harm. And that's where obviously safe sport is a really important key component to set the legal and procedural things that allows us to function in a space that should not have threat or harm. One of the key ingredients is positive interpersonal relationship. And that means not just those between the athlete to athlete, but also athlete to coaches and coach to athlete and parent to parent and parents to coaches and parents to other athletes and so forth. Positive emotional states, that was already discussed. Relief belongs to one of those in some ways. And then the other three key ingredients are inclusivity, feeling equal, and feeling respected. If we then think about what does that look like in general from the athlete perspective, to me, we can kind of put it in one big sentence. Athletes need freedom to try, fail, and learn. And that, if we can keep that at the core of it, that when we are dealing with sport, dealing with swimming, think about meets, think about competition, all of those are environments and opportunities for athletes to try, fail, and learn. So think about your own relationship. I'm going to make you reflect a little bit. If you would love to, I would love to get some of these ideas in the chat because we can learn from each other in these. So think about your own relationship with your child. What do you do or say to make them feel free to try, fail, and learn? Like, what are the key things that you say to your children so that makes them feel free to try, fail, and learn? This is a hard one, I think. You have to start thinking about what are the words that we use. But I'm sure we all say certain things. I've got a list of those in my mind, but I'd like to hear yours too. What do you say or make them feel free to try, fail, and learn?
We all make mistakes and try to learn from it.
Yeah.
This is your sport. It's a safe place. I'm behind you every step of the way. Love you no matter what.
Yep. Give it a couple of minutes if we get more. Sometimes typing with phones is so much harder. I really like that. I think the last part about I love you no matter what. I think that's important. And we often think that we say it enough, but we actually probably don't say it enough. And I sometimes even use the phrase as like, okay, so what is the worst thing can happen if you try or if you put yourself forward? And often the worst thing that can happen, they say no. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's just they said no. And that you continue your life as it was before. I think there's another one, right?
It does not change my feelings and support for you. We learn from when we put effort in something, succeed and fail, and it all helps us grow.
Absolutely. I mean, you're already doing all of those things, and I think that's the really important part. One of my favorite too is having the freedom to try and fail and learn. I typically don't wish my child ever to say, I never wish her good luck, because I think good luck implies that your skills aren't good enough and you need something extra. I know it's a very cultural thing that we always say good luck. But I actually use the phrase that said, have fun and swim fast. That's all I say. There's no indication of luck there. It's just like, go out there, enjoy yourself, and just have fun with it. And that's ultimately what a sport is. It's a kid's game. Like, we're supposed to enjoy that, right? So, but all of your answers are exactly what we're really looking at when we try to create psychological safety. Okay. So a little bit more research here. It's very recent, actually, from 2024. It was done in the UK, but it really looked at like different sports stakeholders, like parents and coaches and safe sport chairs and athletes and stuff, to talk about like, what does a safe environment look like? So what does an environment look like when it's psychologically safe? And kind of similar to those key ingredients, it basically says that the positive relationships are central. meaning that all of those relationships we have with the people becomes at the core of the psychologically safe environment. What that also means from the part of the parents' perspective is that we are key ingredients to creating those positive relationships. And what that looks like is that we don't talk bad about the refs. We don't talk bad about the coaches. We don't go and intervene during the meets when there's coaches in there. We don't compare our children with other parents. So all of those conversations about other kids in front of our own kids, the kids read into it. So the really core ingredient to know that something is psychologically safe is that we create positive relationship with all of those stakeholders that are part of the sport. Same way, welcoming environments matter. So saying hello, making sure that you greet, get to know people, use their names, those are really important. I know we've all been in environments where we go somewhere for the first time and we don't know anybody. And then you think everybody around you already know each other and they talk. And that's the part that then that person may not feel as welcome. So that's another part that we as parents can show by leading by example to really creating those welcoming environment for the new parents or other kids, or saying hello in a way that acknowledges the sibling of the athlete who walks in there too. One of the other things, physical environment influences safety and environment. So if the environment doesn't look nice or doesn't look great, that actually reduces psychological safety and enjoyment. I know that money is tight and fixing all of these things isn't always option and priority. But what I'd like to put there is that we can also take care of what's there a little bit better. Sometimes it's like you leave a meet and you have tons of goggles everywhere, there's drink cups everywhere and all that stuff. So us kind of creating a space in a way that we look after the physical environment that we have in a way that makes it as nice as it can be, has been found to be really, really good indicator if the environment feels psychologically safe. The other part I think is important from parent perspective is that we put our children into developmentally appropriate activities. Sometimes I feel like there's a cultural push to put them like, hey, let's get them to the next level. Let's get them to the AP class. Let's get them to the one stop higher. Well, not all of those are developmentally appropriate for your child at that moment. That doesn't mean that they're not going to get there, but sometimes it's important to recognize that, you know what, for the last 3 years, my child has been pushing, 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 and it feels like it's creeping up on their confidence. Maybe it's time to say, this year, let's slow down a little. That doesn't mean that they are left behind, but it would be developmentally appropriate at that given time for that particular child. The other part is shared goals and expectations reduce conflict. So ensuring that the coach's expectations of your child behavior and outcomes and performance is aligned with the child's as well as yours. I think that's a really important thing. And coaches have so many kids, so they can't really have all of the individual goals for every practice and every meet. That's absolutely fine. But it's also really important for us as parents to kind of say, what do you want from this meet? Right? So you might have a child who comes and says, hey, my coach really wants me to work on my turns at this meet. Then that is the expectation rather than looking at the scoreboard and see what was the time of the meet. So it's important that we as parents understand what is it that those kids are wanting from those meets. And if they look unrealistic, because they're not appropriate for that meet, it's our job to help bring them down to the point that is appropriate. We shouldn't be setting a single goal for our athletes in a meet in terms of times or performance because we're not their coaches. But I think it's important that we recognize what is that they're going for and we adjust our own goals to match that. Another one is very simple, obviously, caring, competent coaches enhance trust and safety. And that's why USA Swimming has a coach training program and everybody goes through all of the training to make sure that we have those. And I do think the really big one for highlight for us is that having very supportive parental involvement strengthen those experiences. So allowing the sport to be their sport, like somebody already said on the chat, that's their sport, it's not ours. And I think sometimes it's even good that they recognize that at the age of 10 or 11, they're already faster in a pool than their mom and dad are, which means that they have mastered something that the mom and dad hasn't. So I think it's important that we give those. That's one of the reasons why my child never did figure skating, because the reality is that she would have not been as good as her mom until she's in her mid-teens, and that would have just made her feel inferior. Had she really wanted to figure skate, I obviously would have given her that opportunity, but I would have never coached her myself because we would have just ended up in arguments. But you see what I'm trying to say here is that the ways in which we support the coach and the athlete, it strengthens all of those experiences in sport in a way that creates it very safe. And last but definitely not least, it's also part of our responsibility to truly understand that our athletes need friendly and supportive peers in that space. And sometimes swimming is a sport where they don't have the opportunity to talk to the other kids as much because they're supposed to be swimming while they're in water. So I think it's important that us as parents get together and create those opportunities for them to be friendly and supportive to each other outside of the pool as well, because it fosters more sense of security and more safety. So when they go to the pool, they feel happy to go because these people, they can do other things than just swim with them, if that makes sense. Any thoughts, questions at this point? I think this is a kind of a good moment to get some questions if anybody has like specifics that come to mind. No? Glad once I'm clear. That's okay then. Excellent. So one of the things that I would like us to then think about is that, okay, so I just listed 8 key things that what a safe environment looks like. And it's really important for us to kind of think about, what do I do well on these? And what are the things that I can improve? I'll start with that before anybody puts in a chat. I think one of the things that I, as a parent, as a swim parent, sometimes forgot was to invite people over more to do things. Because it's just life was busy and it's just like, oh, come on, you already spend so much time with her, your friends at the pool. So I sometimes just couldn't, didn't have time to do all of that. That was definitely something that I think I could have improved. I do think one thing I did well as a swim parent was that I always gave her a choice to decide whether she goes and signs up for the next season. Never took it as a granted. It was every season we would say, it's time to sign up. Are you willing to commit yourself to the next short course season, a long course season, or high school season? So I never took her swimming as a default. It was her choice to always decide what she wanted. Anybody willing to share, or is this going to be more of a private thing that nobody wants to put a chat on? So what do I do well, or what did I do well? Because we have people who are like maybe not as active parents anymore. And what are the things I can improve?
I'll go, Mona. One of the things that I felt that went really well in our house is we always had a dialogue with our kids about their sports, swimming and soccer. If they still enjoyed it, where they wanted to go with it, what their goals were, and how we as parents could help them achieve those goals. What support they needed from us. Did they just need us to buy gear for them? Did they need us to drive them to and from practices? What that all entailed. One of the things that we could have done better as parents is, like you, things were always busy. We spent a lot of time on the road with our athletes, and yet we didn't always spend a lot of downtime with our athletes, enjoying other athletes. Having friends over, having small parties or get-togethers, things like that. We could have done a better job with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think both of those are great examples of the good things and then also the things that, yeah, I could have probably been a bit better. Anybody else want to share?
still involved in various sports, so the discovery process is ongoing and the kiddos are finding what is fulfilling to them.
Yes, that's the cool part. Like, we don't have to settle into one. I love the words discovery. Like we're discovering what's fun for them and allowing them to explore those options. That's really good. Yes. That means there's a lot of years ahead of you to figure it out, and there's a lot of sport that you can do. Excellent. So let's move on. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to go and talk about competition, because I know that was the practical solution is what we want, but I always want to kind of set the scene so we get the philosophy underlying it. So this is simple. This is very easy. How would you define sport competition? What is sport competition? So we're going to start talking about competition now. You can share in the chat or you can speak up too. That's absolutely fine. But what is sport competition? How would you define it? Seems simple, but actually when you start thinking about it, it has a lot of components. While you think about it and don't feel like necessarily sharing in the chat, I'm going to move forward and I'm going to look at it, what actually it is. So if we look at from the definition perspective, they're defined as organized events where individuals or teams engage in athletic contest, often tailored to specific social groups, providing environments that celebrate human excellence and promote an environment free from discrimination. So that's essentially, if we think it about what is a definition of sport competition. I think we got a chat there. So do you want to read that?
Participating in practice and competition in order to improve physically and mentally.
Excellent. You're taking words from my next slide, because if we look at this definition, to me, it's so academic. There's too many things in it. It doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. So if we really think about what is sport competition, first of all, it's a natural part of the world and a human experience. We can go back to the ancient times and people are already having Olympics in the ruins of Greece. Obviously, they were in ruins back then, but it's been a natural part of being a human and being a part of the world. So competition and sport competition is actually something that is perfectly normal, and it's perfectly something that should and is existing in the world since the start of time. It is also a human activity where we can find and realize and further develop our potential. So it's seen to be as something where we can kind of explore, well, what can I do? Oh, I didn't know I could do this. I can be better, right? And on top of that, while it's a very sort of individualized human activity, it is also very observable social comparison process that happens according to special rules that are developed for that particular sport. That's why we have officials. That's why we have a rule book. But it is ultimately an observable social comparison. So we are comparing ourselves in the eyes of the public. People can see what you do to make those social comparisons. Typically, the results are determined by judges. In our sport and swimming, it's obviously the clock. It's a very, very rude time. So the times are there and you don't change the clock. But ultimately, even those clocks are confirmed by the judges. The judges will make sure that what you do is according to the rules. So you don't do too much underwater, so you don't touch with one hand. There are lots of different rules that are developed there to try to create so that the final result that comes from the clock is actually fair, and those other parts are determined by judges. In addition to the results that are determined by judges, athletes often have their own self-reference process and their outcome criteria. And more often than not, us parents also have our own self-reference process and outcome criteria. So our athletes, in addition to the results determined by judges, may have their own different kind of thing. Well, but I didn't want that. I wasn't happy that I got this, and this was my goal. There are sometimes times they may, for example, win, but they're not happy with their time. Equally, there could be that the athlete themselves have gone to the pool with the coach, agreed, hey, I don't care about my times. I'm really focused on how do I split my 200. And they end up being really happy with the different splits that they make. But then the parents look and say, well, but you added 7 seconds. So then the parent's self-reference process or outcome criteria is not the same what the coach and the athlete has created. Competition is also an opportunity for us to demonstrate excellence. And in order to demonstrate that excellence, you have to practice regularly and show that development. So the excellence doesn't show if you don't practice regularly and start showing what you're doing. Which also then means that in order to compete, both practices and competitions are major contributing factors to both the physical and mental competencies and the skills that are required. So if you only go to practices and never to meets, you may not learn the mental skills that are required to cope with the speed of the race, and all of a sudden there's more hassle, there's the starting apparatus, there's whistles, there's all kinds of things. Equally, if you never really practice and only turn up for meets and compete and hope to get a best time, the chances of you being able to swim in a way that results in that best time are going to be limited. And if we really compare this even further, only competitions really allows the athlete to demonstrate their excellence in public and to achieve any kinds of social recognition. So in some ways, while they go hand in hand, you participating in practices doesn't give you the opportunity to show your excellence in public or gain any recognition. In order to do that, and therefore kind of start realizing what's my potential, the competitions are absolutely a natural part of what we do in sport. I know I threw a lot of stuff there. That was a big one and a big slide. But I'm going to break this a little bit easier, right? But that was kind of what I would call the science behind it. To me, that creates a philosophy for what sport really is. So in other words, competition is a big part of sport. Finding and realizing and developing our potential has many dimensions. It's not one-dimensional. So it's not just about the outcome time. It's about being able to adjust your stroke to the wall. It's about able to do your turn in a way that you got a big underwaters underneath. So there's lots of different ways that in the competition setting, an athlete can find and develop and realize their potential for greatness. There are rules that exist to guide the sport, but judges are human too. So sometimes we make mistakes, and that's okay because everybody in that pool deck is human. And the fact that we have those self-reference criteria for success, that we create our own rules of what we account as to be good enough, they can be helpful at times, but they can also be harmful. And I think the important part too is that practice reflects reality. I like to use the word that competition confident comes from well-executed practices. If you don't practice, you're not going to get to the competition and hope that the star lands and you get all of them things right. Physical and mental skills are also not fixed, so they change and they can grow and they can modify as the athlete grows. And competitions are just milestones as part of their athletic career, not a destination. Every state meet is just another milestone. It's not the end all. It's not the be all. It's not a destination. They're just little milestones that gives them some kind of understanding of their potential and some kind of overt external recognition that I am getting better. Okay, so what does then, if that's our philosophy to take for all of our swim meets, how do we create psychologically safe swim meet experiences for our kids? And I think this comes down to a lot of actionable behaviors from our part. Before meets, I have sort of 4 key things that I think make or break that process. First is you fix the fundamentals. And what I mean by that is make sure that they sleep, eat, and hydrate as well as they can. That is absolutely one of the key things. Leading up to the meet, you want to make sure they have a couple of few, like their nights that they sleep are really good, well rested. And it's another way to also alleviate other stressors. So if there's a lot of schoolwork coming before a bigger meet, it might be a smart thing, try to get those done a little bit earlier, or purposefully delay them and do them right after the meet. So all the other stressors, maybe 2 days before a meet is not the time when everybody goes to Target at 6 p.m. on a Capitol Drive traffic. That is not necessarily the most appropriate way to do. So you can alleviate some other stresses. Doesn't mean you take them away, but alleviate. I think a preparation early is key. What I mean by that is I don't think you need to start packing your bags, but start thinking about what is it that you need. And those often typically happens in things like casual dinner conversations, what I think Angela was just referring to. That you might ask on a Monday and said, hey, you got to meet this weekend. What kind of food do you want me to take? You may already know what they want to take, but it might be smart to ask them anyway. Say, hey, and it doesn't have to be that I am going to the store just to get your food. I'm about to go and do grocery shopping. What do you need for the weekend? And that kind of starts the conversation in a casual way and doesn't make it a last minute rush or a barrier. They're like, oh my God, the meat is coming. It just becomes part of the preparation for the meat comes as a normal part of your everyday things, such as going to the grocery store or having a dinner. You can also have those conversations about, hey, what events are you swimming? What do you think you want to achieve at this meet? Have you and your coach talked about? And it's like, well, I really want to get my diets right. That's awesome. So then when they finish the meet, you can ask about that as well. During the meets, I think there are a couple of really key things. I think the main one is to support autonomy by allowing the athletes to own their swimming. This is not our swimming. Unless they need your help by asking for your help, we have no business being and doing anything with them. So you can say, I'm sure you're okay changing your suit. Let me know if you need any help. So allowing them to have the autonomy to own their swimming, to engage in the swimming the ways in which they want to, and for us to simply allow them to do that and be there should they need us. I also want us to trust the process and avoid the sideline coaching. I have no business telling my child how to evaluate her stroke or her performances because I'm not a swim coach. And even if I was, I'm not her swim coach. So I want that to be that we trust the process, that they are there to learn with those experienced coaches. And we are not the ones who are going to say, well, you should do this or you should do that, or did you notice yourself doing that? We just leave that to the coaches. That's the coach's role. And last but not least, recognize and own your own emotional responses. Because sometimes we as parents have very, very heavy and rightfully so emotional responses to their performances. When you see that they didn't do well, you know, the pit in your stomach can be just as big. When you want them to get that state cut, you feel it too. And especially if your mom, I feel like there is an invisible bond that you just feel all of their pains and aches in a different way. And that's okay. We should have those feelings because we are their parents. But we also have to recognize and own those emotional responses because they're ours and they may not match the child's. Or our responses may start something else in a child that may not be appropriate for them. And then after the meets, I think it's really important that we focus the praise on the effort and not just the outcomes. So yeah, the times may be the final ultimate social validation they get, but really it's about the effort and not just the outcomes. Obviously, if they win, that's awesome, but sometimes they win by not putting in any effort. So it's important that we recognize that where does our effort go? Where does our praise go? So focusing on both rather than just giving it when they do exceptionally well. The other important part is we have to normalize setbacks and disappointments. That is absolutely key. And it's okay to say, I know that was not what you wanted out of this meet. And I understand that you're upset. Feel it, experience it, and then you help them to move on from them. Sometimes it means that we don't have words straight after they finish the meet. Sometimes it just means that we give them some time to process. And we just sit in silence and say, I love you. Let me know when you're ready to talk. Sometimes it means that they're not ready to talk and you're just going to go out for a pizza and have a good time. So if we think about it, and this is me bringing a little bit more psychology to the picture, if we create a psychologically safe environment, that will facilitate basic human needs, which is having a sense of autonomy. It is my choice, sense of competence, I can do this, and sense of relatedness, I belong. Those are three basic human needs. If we can do if we create a psychologically safe environment, we will facilitate these basic needs. Those needs will increase our motivation, which by definition means intensity and effort. That intensity and effort will translate into practice. So practice becomes intentional. They're going to focus on the things that matter, listen to the coaches, and really put their effort in. When we are participating in intentional practice, that means that we get a little bit more confident about what we're doing because we've been intentional. That will decrease performance anxiety, which will result in a better performance in the competitive environments, which will obviously then increase their confidence. So it's kind of like this stepwise thing that happened. And when you got higher confidence, you return back to the psychologically safe environments, and the cycle just keeps getting better and better and better. So looking at those little things that we as parents can do, we are contributing very big chunks into the psychologically safe environment. And that way we can get our athletes to truly enjoy what they're doing and hanging out in that sport for as long as they want to. Perfect. So just to recap a little bit, I wanted to talk to you about practical tips and understanding what does psychological safety mean in competitions. And I do hope you left with the foundational understanding of what psychological safety is and why it's important, and really kind of key basic fundamental strategies you can use as a parent to prepare your child for these competitions. Just to put you up on your radar, we have a couple of other things at the Wisconsin Swimming website. So if you look at those, we have a Raising Children Who Swim, top 10 tips from sports science. There's a webinar and there's a lot of different information there for you to see. And of those, I would actually highlight the tips 1, 3, 8, 9, 10, and the bonus tip as the most important ones for psychological safety. So I encourage you to go and check them out if you haven't done so already. It kind of explains a little bit about those things, and then it gives you some reflective questions to think about. How can you be better support for your children when they participate in the sport of swimming? And that's it. And I'm going to go back to my native Finnish and say kiitos, which means thank you. And any questions from anybody at this point? Or comments? No? I think we're good. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mona. You always have very good information. Thank you for sharing.
Did you stop that already, please?
Yes.